It's back to school time. This year, Sport Clips Haircuts will send you back in style with the prize package sure to send you straight to the head of the class. Visit sportclips.com/back-to-school for your chance to win. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
All right, here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, doing our best for the majority of this morning to talk sports with you, give you an opportunity to take your mind off some of the other things that are going on. We did open the show this morning, just for those of you who are with us, with our thoughts on the horrific events in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend, and we'll certainly touch on those as the morning continues. But for the majority of the day, we assume that you were here because you want to hear us talk a little bit about sports, and so that is the majority of what our show is today.
Absolutely, because there are places you can go to hear about what's going on there. But also, in that same vein, we wanted to and we did give our opinions about it, as any person in any walk of life should be able to give their opinion about what they see going on and the horrific things that are happening in Charlottesville. And it bled into the sports world in the way of, you know, a family name that has great history with the NFL. You know, Howie Long, the Long family, a Hall of Famer, and two sons playing in the league. That's where they're from, Charlottesville. You know, grew up in that area, and they certainly talked about what has been going on in that area. So it has, to some point, affected some who know that area. And just to have an opinion on what we see happening in our country and in the world today, everybody has an opinion about it, and we gave that and we talked about it, but we understand why you're tuning into our show to discuss what's going on in the world of sports, which sometimes takes us off the field as well, obviously, as on the field.
Meanwhile, back to some of the topics that we've been on this morning. We were just talking about Bryce Harper and his injury and how he escaped much more serious injury than it certainly appeared. When you saw that leg, what's the word to describe what his leg did? It bent the wrong way.
It slid off the base, and then the heel dug into the ground. It looked like the ankle turned a little sideways, but the leg hyperextended, and the bones, you know, bang when that happens in the knee, and he has that bone bruise. So, yeah, it looked ugly. It absolutely looked ugly. I saw it. I saw him grab his knee. I saw him get helped off the field, and I thought, oh, my God, he's in trouble. But you know what it can be akin to is when you roll that ankle, and everybody's done that. The pain that hits you when you roll that ankle, it's excruciating. But then after a bit, you know, it starts to, you know, you can start to move a little more and walk and come back from it. But this one I do think will be a month or so. I absolutely do.
I did have one friend of mine who sent me a note. We just played some of his sound bites from Bryce Harper talking about it. And one of the things he said in it was, it's 10 o'clock at night and we're playing a game in the rain, and I was aggravated about that. And I sort of didn't conceptualize much in my mind because I just was sort of moving on to the other issues that are involved. And a friend of mine, my friend Chris, sent me a note that said, 10 o'clock and raining. What's his salary? Nobody likes a crybaby.
Yeah, I heard that as well, and I just went on by it like, so what?
I didn't stop with it either. I'm just saying, he sort of threw it in there in the middle of a lot of other things, and you do feel bad for the guy because he got hurt. It's a bad injury. It's a freaky thing. The base is wet, and his foot slides across it like he's slipping in the shower, as he described it, and it was just one of those many comments. So it sort of went in one ear and out the other when he said it for me.
Yeah, I tried not to pay any attention to it.
But I wonder how many people – well, it's sort of back to the point that we had last week about scholarship athletes. No one wants to hear their problem.
No.
That's a problem, right? If you're playing a game, it's 10 o'clock at night, maybe it should have been. I don't really know all the details of the weather that night, but maybe they should have postponed it. Whatever the case may be, those are problems. Those are issues that you have. But as is the case with many others, when your salary is $13.62 million, people don't want to hear about your problem.
They don't want to hear that you had to play a game. You know, I know it's your job, but play a game when it's a little slick at 10 at night. So
all right.
I'm with you.
We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance side, including our NFL analyst extraordinaire, our buddy Ryan Clark, is back with us on Mike and Mike as we are gearing up for football season. Good morning, Ryan Clark.
Good morning, fellas. How y'all doing?
Good.
We're doing good. Let's start with with the story that took place on Friday, but obviously it has the longest impact into the season on the field itself initially, and that would be the suspension of Zeke Elliott. He will officially, we expect, appeal his suspension tomorrow. I don't think anybody anticipates that it's going to be reduced. So let's start on the field before we get anywhere else. How much does that change? Zeke Elliott sitting the first 6 games. How much does that change your perception of that team and what they can accomplish in what should be a pretty crowded division?
Oh, it changes it totally. Zeke Elliott was a difference maker. He was a guy that took some of these great offensive linemen and some of the holes that they create and made some of those 20 and 15-yard plays turn into 60 and 50-yard touchdowns. You think back to the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Early on in the game, he catches the screen and goes for about 80. Later on in the game, you know they're in a 4-minute type of offense. They're just going to run the football and try to churn clock until they can get a field goal, and he busts through the middle and scores. He's that type of difference maker. And you do have Alfred Morris, who was a 1,500-yard rusher. You have Darren McFadden, who was the 4th pick of the draft. But even with those guys, they aren't Ezekiel Elliott. They don't pose the threat that he poses. And so now this puts more pressure on Dak Prescott, and a guy that many people expect to not have a sophomore slump, a guy many people expect to be better this year, who I think was already going to be given more on his plate. Now it puts it squarely on his shoulders to produce for this team, to not make mistakes for this team. And, oh, by the way, their schedule in the beginning of the season is extremely difficult. And as you mentioned, in a very, very crowded and competitive NFC East, I think this changes the dynamic of this team, but it also changes the dynamic of this division. And you have to really lean toward the New York Giants as the team to beat, because they are the most talented team already.
And let's add to the fact we keep saying, Darren McFadden and Morris will have that O-line to run behind. Remember, Lel Collins was a starting left guard. He went over to right tackle. There's a new starting left guard. And Teron Smith, the fantastic left tackle, Pro Bowler, All-Pro that they have, has not been playing and practicing. He's got that bulging disc in his back that's kind of been aggravated. So we need to keep an eye on that as well, on how that line will be affected. As far as games he's going to miss, Ryan, 6 games, he's going to appeal it. The appeal goes back to Roger Goodell or who he appoints. Do you think where we are now in the landscape of discipline handed out by the league in other cases, and in this case, 6 games after the long investigation, do you think there's any way that number gets lessened in the appeal?
I'm not sure. I would think that the NFL took the time it took to be right. I believe they took the time it took to investigate this thing so they can hand down a punishment or hand down a judgment that they felt like they could stand behind. And when you take this long, when it goes for over a year, then you come down as stiffly and as sternly as they did in 6 games, you have to believe that they stand behind it and they believe this is what it warranted. Obviously, when you look at some of the criminal charges or the criminal charges that weren't brought against Ezekiel Elliott, and you read some of the evidence, whether it's witnesses saying that he never, laid a hand on a girl, he was never close to her, whether it's text messages reading different things about what she liked to do to him. Obviously, through their investigation, they found out some things that we haven't been privy to. They know that there may be some things on the horizon that we haven't heard that go against Ezekiel Elliott. This is just me assuming. I don't want people to think I know, what they know. But for it to be a 6-game suspension, I would think the NFL has to be pretty sure. And I believe also this time they wanted to attempt or at least give the perception that they were being proactive. They didn't want a Ray Rice situation where they hand down a punishment and then there's a video that comes out and then there's more information that comes out that shows that they were lenient. They didn't want a Josh Brown situation where a guy only gets a 1-game suspension and then you hear these other things about him and now the commissioner exempt list has to be used in order to try to rectify these situations. The NFL has been burned in their handling of domestic violence so many times. I believe now they're trying to get out in front of it. And we know the NFL, they believe in perception. They believe in trying to make the world see a certain thing when it sees the shield. I think that played into it, and I also feel like they've investigated something, and they feel like they know something that we don't. Hopefully we find out what those things are during the appeal process.
Ryan Clark is with us with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. I forgot who I asked this question to last week. But as all of the attention on Colin Kaepernick not being signed by an NFL team continued to grow, I asked the question, will we see active players make some sort of stand for him? Will they in some way come out and support him? What will the active players do? And I don't know that there was a direct connection between that and Marshawn Lynch this weekend and Michael Bennett this weekend. But I wonder your reaction to now more high-profile players taking the actions that they have, and not necessarily related to the Colin Kaepernick situation, but certainly the glaring absence of Kaepernick in an NFL camp, I think also provides a little more context to all of this. What was your reaction to what we saw this weekend?
Well, obviously we've heard Malcolm Jenkins say he will continue to protest. Marshawn Lynch is a guy, if you listen to, Jack Del Rio, Marshawn, who said he never stood with his team, during the national anthem. He's also a man last September, while making an appearance on a TV show, said, he supports Colin Kaepernick, and if that's where it needs to start for change to be made, then he's in support of him. Also, we've seen Michael Bennett be very vocal. Michael Bennett be a part of the Know Your Rights camp movement with Colin Kaepernick. Michael Bennett campaigned for Colin Kaepernick to be the backup quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. So he's the guy who has been in support over the period Colin Kaepernick has been dealing with this. Also, a guy who's put his own self out there in support of African Americans. And so I think there are going to be people that continue to support, whether it's just supporting Colin Kaepernick or understanding as bigotry begins to rear its head more and more in society, as racism and discrimination continues to come from under the hood a little bit. And now those people who were going against Colin Kaepernick, who will use, African American statistics and violent crimes, the number of whites that were killed by cops, those who just loved cops in general and had people in law enforcement who were close to them. Now it's not about the Rices and the Garners and the Castills and the Sterlings. Now it's more about what we're seeing in society as a whole. And I think as the NFL and as the fans of the NFL has continued to push to silence Colin Kaepernick, to show Colin Kaepernick that he didn't really have a voice, and the voice of the African American people wasn't welcome in sports, as he's continued to do that. I think some of the hate from the people who really didn't understand and from the people who really didn't have a side has subsided. And also Colin Kaepernick was the flag bearer. He didn't even go into the war on the front line. He was the flag bearer. He didn't even have a gun. He didn't have people behind him fighting. And I think now you have a few more people who understand what's going on, who kind of have a grasp of what's going on. And I think there will be others that continue to support, one, because it's needed, and two, because Colin Kaepernick has also empowered a lot of people, as we've seen the bigots and the racists be empowered by other things that are going on in American society.
It's been an interesting road for all of that, and we'll see where it continues, especially with a guy like Colin Kaepernick, who's still looking for a job. As we go on the field, two guys that are fighting for jobs, and in this question, fighting for starting jobs. One thing we heard about the class of quarterbacks coming into the draft this year and getting picked, Ryan, was, well, these guys need to wait. These guys need to learn, maybe a redshirt year, maybe that whole deal. And then Deshaun Watson has a nice game. Mitch Trubisky has a really good game while Mike Glennon doesn't. Deshaun Kaiser has a pretty good game for the Cleveland Browns. So out of those three guys, who do you think may see the field first?
I know there's been a lot of support for Savage down in Houston. And he's a guy who, DeAndre Hopkins comes out and says, I put my stamp on him. But Deshaun Watson is a guy who's a proven winner, a guy who comes out and just makes plays, has a feel for the game at the quarterback position. So I believe that he has a real chance to play this year and get on the field. And between him and Deshaun Kaiser, because of the people that they're battling, obviously I think Patrick Mahomes played well, but Alex Smith is going to be the quarterback of that team. You look at Deshaun Kaiser, what he was able to come out on the field and do. Also, watching Brock Osweiler play, you kind of see the same old Brock we've seen throughout the years, the last 2 years, both in Denver and Houston. A guy who can't necessarily take over a team or take over the offense. And then you hear people come out and defend his play. When you look at Deshaun Kaiser and Deshaun Watson, I look for both of those guys to be the week one starter. I think both of those guys are on teams that need quarterbacks that are different, that need quarterbacks who can become franchise quarterbacks. You need quarterbacks who can bring hope. And I think both of those guys can, both with their arm and with their legs. And we saw a little bit of that on display this past week.
Mike Ryan Clark is with us. The New England Patriots, as the season sort of gets itself going, feel as though they are a level of favorite that we're just not accustomed to having in the NFL, particularly now with a 6-game suspension to Zeke Elliott on another of the better teams in the league. The Patriots almost feel like they're the Golden State Warriors, or they're like a Floyd Mayweather-esque kind of favorite in his fight against Conor McGregor. Do you view it that way? Do you think the league right now is New England and then everybody else?
I do. I think it being football helps, because in football things happen. And in all sports things can happen. But in football, people go down. In football, you have injuries. You have guys who have to step up and play. But if you take New England's schedule, there is a stretch of 5 road games out of 6 where you play the likes of, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dolphins and the Broncos, that can give you, some losses just by the attrition that's accumulated through playing a schedule like that. But if you take the New England Patriots schedule right now, as we look on paper, and you just take it game by game, not necessarily looking at a stretch of games, but take it game by game, the New England Patriots should be favored in every game. So for Vegas to feel like they have a good chance of going undefeated, if you take it game by game and you don't think football and you don't think injuries, there's a good chance that they can do that. The New England Patriots should be favored in every single football game they have scheduled right now. When you look at what this team has accomplished, not only last year, but a team has accomplished throughout history with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, it's already hard to bet against those guys. And then they go out in this offseason and they get better. And it wasn't the normal New England Patriot way of stacking draft picks and drafting all of these people. They saw a need for a guy that can take the top off of a defense, so they go out and get Cooks. They saw the way they had to scheme and kind of struggle to do some different things in order to cover up people in the Super Bowl when you have a Julio Jones, you have a Mohamed Sanu. So they go out and they get Stephon Gilmore. This team went and got better in places that it needed to. You keep Dante Hightower. And so you continue to keep the core of the team, but you also add some pieces you didn't have with experienced veterans who come in ready to play right now. What this team was able to do in the offseason with the people who lead this team, they are definitely the odds-on favorite to me to not only represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, but to come out victorious as the Super Bowl champions once again.
He is Ryan Clark, and he's ready for some football. Thank you, RC. See you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Ryan Clark, Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now, that's Progressive. Call a click today. Find out how much Progressive could save you. Put that schedule back up. I see 2 games. If you're looking for the Patriots and any place that they might not wind up being favored, if you went to Vegas right now, they'd be a favorite in every game that they're playing.
Right.
I can see 2 spots where, depending on how the season is playing out, it's not inconceivable they won't be. The first one is Sunday, November 19th at Oakland. Let's see what Oakland is.
Right.
I mean, the way Oakland was playing last year, if their defense gets a little better, and they have a lot of good pieces on that defense. Obviously, Khalil Mack is a superstar. But last year, they were kind of overcoming a lot of defensive deficiencies. Remember, Carr was winning all those games in the fourth quarter. If they get a little better defensively and Carr keeps going at the rate that he is now that he's back and healthy, Sunday, November 19th at Oakland, that's a pretty interesting one to see what the line
I would agree.
might be.
11 games in, you're going to get a pretty good picture, obviously, at that point of what both teams are.
And Sunday, December 17th at Pittsburgh. I mean, we assume the Steelers will be a good team if all those guys are healthy. Martavis Bryant was practicing again the other day. If Le'Veon Bell, he's going to come into camp. He's going to play. He's going to be there. Obviously, Antonio Brown. If Ben is healthy, on the road at this, you look for the road games. The Patriots will certainly be favored in every home game they play this year. So they have a couple of tough games. I mean, they play Atlanta. So a Super Bowl rematch coming in Sunday, October 22nd, but that's at home. They'll be a favorite in that game. They go to Denver. There's some questions about the Broncos of the quarterback situation. They're home with Houston.
At Denver, at Oakland, back-to-back. That's a good couple-week stretch.
Oh, I take it back. Excuse me. The Oakland game is in Mexico City. So it's not at Oakland. It is considered a road game. The game is in Mexico City. Let me clarify that. I had forgotten that. Thank you for pointing that out. So it isn't a true road game. That's an advantage. Of course, the Patriots get one of their true road games in Mexico City. And the Raiders giving away a home game in one of their final seasons in front of their fans in Oakland.
Then in December, they have a 3-game road stretch of going to Buffalo, going to Miami, and finishing that with Pittsburgh, at Pittsburgh. So
They'll be significantly favored in the Buffalo and the Miami.
Yeah, they will.
What's Miami going to be with Cutler? I mean, who the heck knows?
We don't know.
We
don't know.
New England will certainly, I would guess. Again, all these things are so premature because injuries can take place. But if everything is what we think it'll be, they'll be a heavy favorite in Buffalo. They'll be favored in Miami. Pittsburgh and at Oakland. I'd forgotten that Oakland game is in Mexico City.
Yeah.
That does change the dynamic a little bit.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
All right, I've got a couple of tweets here I want to get to. I got a bunch of stuff working here. So I got two quirky, fun facts for you. One of them is related to the PGA. The other one is related to the football marathon. And then we're going to get Golik's thoughts on some of the preseason football over the weekend. But which do you want first? Do you want the football marathon quirky fun fact or the PGA quirky fun fact?
PGA fun fact.
Okay, you're going to like this. I got this from Jason Sobel, who covers golf for us at ESPN, and who is a very good Twitter follow if you like golf. So you saw that the winner yesterday of the PGA Championship was Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas, whose first name Justin and whose last name Thomas each have 6 letters in them. Did you know the winners of all 4 majors this year had 6 letters in their first name and 6 letters in their last name? Sergio Garcia, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas each have 6 letters in their first name and 6 letters in their last name. Now, you can go one of 2 ways with that stat, and I'm gauging from the look on your face which way you're going to go. You can either, as I did, say, that is fascinating. What are the odds that something like that could happen? Or you can have the look on your face which suggests you're about to say,
that is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Why? You don't find that fascinating?
No.
I find those little things in life
Not one bit. Not a bit. Nothing. Nothing about that. I thought you were going to have like a fun fact that I would really enjoy.
I think it's a fun fact.
That's
How could you not enjoy
fact.
that fact? What's not enjoyable about that fact?
Fun about that fact. It's coincidental. That's about it.
Does this suggest to you that Ricky Fowler will win the next major because he spells his name Rickie, that's 6 letters, Fowler, that's 6 letters. Fowler, it would seem, should be in line to win his next major.
I would say we go.
How about Martin Keimer? How about Daniel Berger? How about Graham DeLette? They all spell their names.
That's what we need to do is go through the entire PGA field and find out 6 letters for first and last name and just put them.
So you're poo-pooing my 6 letters.
Poo-pooing big time.
Again, this is Jason Sobel. I'm not stealing it. I'm enjoying it, and I'm passing it along. That is Jason Sobel's little note.
Yes. Well, now I really see why you're attaching it to Jason Sobel, so it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Let me read you one more tweet, and then I want to get some of your thoughts on the preseason NFL action that you saw this weekend. Our own Linda Cohn was listening and chimed this in on our conversation about Bryce Harper. The game shouldn't have been played. 3-hour delay. Rain 20 minutes into the game, which began at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Fans suffer and player safety suffers. Listen, I agree completely. And the point I was making, and by reading the note that I got from my friend Chris, is it's a perfect illustration of how no one wants to hear your problems if you're rich. So, like, Bryce Harper was making a point. That game didn't start till 10 o'clock. It was raining. It was ridiculous. We shouldn't have played out there. Now, this kind of thing can happen. Fluke injuries happen all the time. And he didn't talk about it endlessly.
Right.
He talked about it briefly. He just sort of threw it in and mentioned that he was aggravated about it. But the point is that a lot of people pick up on that, and their first reaction is, you make $13.62 million. I'm not interested in hearing your problem.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear.
That's all I was doing.
Nobody here wants to hear about that problem. And I don't know the ins and outs of that. I don't know the scheduling of when they can make it up, and you start to get into that part of the equation. So I don't know. All I know, it's probably not the first or last game he's going to play after a long rain delay. I've heard others say if he'd hit the bag properly, it never would have happened.
He hits the middle of the bag.
Hits the middle of the bag. Now
he's
trying to get there quickly, so the steps. He's reaching for it to make a play to get to first base. So I know what a lot of the tweeters are saying is you're taught how to hit the bag, the front of the bag, and properly hit the bag as you're running by. You learn that in Little League, the fundamentals of the game. But, in a play where you're trying to get there, you're trying to get to the base, and you're just reaching out for it, we've seen guys do you're not supposed to slide head first into first base, yet guys do it. And he's trying to get there, so he's trying to reach for the bag. It was just one of those fluke things where the fundamentals say you hit the front of the bag, but in a play when you're trying to get there and you're trying to reach for it and you're trying to get there as soon as you can, you're not always going to hit the fundamentals of everything. And in this case, he caught the top of a slick bag. It's a fluke thing. It happened. I don't know if we need to change everything for it. I saw in a Buster Only column talked about lowering the level of the base, talk about there was
it's shaped like a crown. They've changed it. It's crenellated now.
It's
like a crenellated parapet sitting out there in the middle of a base path.
Make it spongier so your foot kind of sinks into it. You look at the old baseball movies that they make on there where they were like actual bags out there,
right,
that you kind of stepped on and they gave, or make it kind of tackier. There are gloves out there, like gloves that have the tack on them and are waterproof.
Like rain gloves for golf.
So do you make them, the base out of that? I don't know. I don't know if it's something that you could just easily fix, put a tackier paint, because they paint the bases as well to get them nice and white looking. And then if it rains, so it's slick, and you find a way. I would think in this day and age you can make them not slick. But I mean, are we going to seriously start talking about lowering the height of a base or something? That's not drastic, but a real change thing in this. I don't know if we need to go that far.
Well, could you make so? Stephen Pinzino tweets at us. Could you make all the bases like home plate except square? So home plate is like how do you even describe, what is it? Everyone knows what home plate is. I don't need to describe it for you.
But basically,
it's not a
flat.
bag.
It's flat and it's rubber.
Yeah, it's just like
Now I heard Dan Z, who's working on our show. My son Mike was talking about the different changes, and Dan got on and said that the most dangerous base is home plate, of which, as I was listening to it, I disagreed with him. He had said he'd been talking about when you were in Little League, I think, Dan, you said that you were told to run behind it if it got wet because it wasn't safe to run on home plate.
And obviously we have all this guaranteed money tied up in your contract, so to lose you would be devastating. I mean, Harper is one thing, but we can't lose Dan Z.
So to not hit home plate, is that what you were spewing this morning? Am I getting that correct, Dan?
I was actually talking about something far more important, and that was slow pitch softball.
Oh God!
And it is the umpire would make a ruling that if it was raining, you could actually step behind the plate rather than on it, because stepping on a wet home plate is pretty dangerous. So the rule was as long as you were relatively close to just behind the plate, you were good to go.
This is a great day.
Well,
Can I tell you why this is a great day?
That?
Because we finally found someone who can speak on this program who's less athletic than I am.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's a rule for non-athletes.
I mean,
that's all that is.
If you're not capable of stepping on home plate in a slow pitch softball game, I feel all of a sudden I'm Usain Bolt. I'm whoever it is that won the decathlon at last year's Olympics. That's how athletic I am comparatively
You're talking
speaking.
about men's slow pitch softball.
Oh, I stepped on the bag. I've scored a lot of runs. I played some ball when I was growing up, and I stepped on that base every single time.
The ump is basically looking at the group out there, seeing some guy in an extra small, and it's still baggy on him. Another guy, when he bends down to take a grounder, his butt crack is showing, and he's saying, my God, guys, don't run on home plate. Oh, I see Dan just put the microphone down. He wants no part of this anymore. Seriously, you were told not to step on home plate because it was too slippery for you.
It wasn't me personally. It wasn't like they looked at me and they're like, hey, man, you're the guy. Home plate, not for you. It was a co-ed Sunday softball league. It was for everybody, Mike.
And it was obviously, an extraordinarily high level of athletic competition.
Without question, yeah.
I'm still more fascinated by the 6-letter spellings of the first
really
and last
are.
names
You
of all the PGA
really,
Tour
that's
players.
amazing. Yeah.
All right, Mike and Mike brought to you by DraftKings. Try daily fantasy for free at DraftKings. Use the code Mike now at DraftKings.com. So, Golic, as you were watching the preseason action this weekend, as most teams are playing their first preseason game, give me one thing that stood out for you.
Well, I'll actually give you a couple, and I mentioned it when Ryan was on. In watching and in hearing about all the quarterbacks, as I said, that they need time. The one guy I thought that would need less time would be Deshaun Watson because of his experience in college. And he had a nice game. But I tell you, the guy that impressed me most was Mitchell Trubisky, a guy with 13 starts. And I know it wasn't against the first team. I get all that. But I'm judging someone on what they did when they were in the game, no matter who they were playing against. Okay? And he played well. The one thing about them, Deshaun Kaiser was a little slower of a start, but he hit his stride a bit in the second half. One of the things he does best is hit the long ball. But Trubisky, his accuracy to me was the key. He was not throwing guys to bad situations. He was throwing to guys and giving them the ability to run with the ball after the catch. He was moving well. I thought him and Deshaun Watson really played extremely well. So it really made me start thinking who is going to be that first guy on the field. Trubisky was one we thought he's redshirting. He's Christian Hackenberg. He's not getting on the field. And now you hear not only does he play well, Glennon doesn't play well, Sanchez is nicked up, so more reps are going to come Trubisky's way. So I'm really interested to see where that direction goes. And the other one is what I talked about is Zeke Elliott's not there, but they have that offensive line. Need to keep an eye on that O-line for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they're working on a contract for Zach Martin. He'll be the highest-paid guard, deserves it. They got Fredericks, the center, fantastic. Tyron Smith, the left tackle, who was one of the best in the game, he's got that bad back, that bulging disc in the back, and that is a bad thing. And he has not seen the field yet. So you got to keep an eye on that. As I mentioned, La'el Collins was a starting left guard. He's over at right tackle. They have a new starting left guard and right now an injured left tackle. So that line that I still think is a great line, it's got some issues to it, and now you don't have that running back behind there. That is absolutely something to keep an eye on. Hey, everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030. Sports Center brought to you by Shell. You deserve to be rewarded today with instant gold status. Now save on every fill every day at Shell when you join the Fuel Rewards program, a free loyalty program. Join now at fuelrewards.com/ESPN.
Dominique Foxworth will join us coming up here. I have a couple of different things I want to get into. Jay Billis has responded to our conversation that we were having a few moments ago. He sent a text in here that says, we were talking about Bryce Harper got hurt the other night. You've seen it. Terrible-looking injury. Foot slides on the bag and then just catches in the dirt on the other side of first base. All things considered, it's an extraordinarily fortunate outcome. It's not an injury that's no torn ligaments. It's not going to keep him out, we don't think, for the playoffs.
No, I think about him. Dodged an absolute bullet. Has a bone bruise.
And so he was among the things that he said in his comments, very briefly. He didn't harp on this to make it clear, but he said, I was upset that it was 10 o'clock at night. We were playing a game in the rain, and those were the circumstances. Linda Cohn tweeted at us, the game should never have been played. It started 3 hours later. It was raining 20 minutes in. It's bad for the fans. It's bad for player safety. So all of that is correct. Mm-hmm. The only point I made was a friend of mine sent me a note, said, oh, boo-hoo, they're playing 10 o'clock at night in the rain. A guy makes, what is it?
$13 million.
13. His salary is 13.
And, by the way, he's a guy that's probably going to sign a $400. But
it's eventually going to be 30
Should that have anything to do with it? It shouldn't, but it does in people's perception.
Yeah, people don't. I brought this up last week with varsity athletes. If you make $13 million a year, no one wants to hear your problems.
Nope.
People may understand subliminally that you have them too, that all people have problems. Mm-hmm. But no one wants to hear your problems if you're making $13 million. So Jay sent a text in response to that conversation. Right. How far does shut up and play extend? To any injury? To concussions? I mean, at what point do you think that the fans response of, oh, shut up and play. If he had been out
seriously
for the season, if he tore up his knee, if he fell and landed on his head and suffered a severe concussion and missed the rest of the season. And by the way, people are making a lot. I'm tying two things together that really aren't connected. But you see that Jay Ajayi is still 2 weeks and counting now from that concussion. Right. But whatever, just which is to me an interesting sidebar. But at what point do you think people then
I
give them free license to complain?
Everybody's different on that. There will be some that will never give an inch to an athlete making all that kind of money, saying deal with your situation. Deal with your elements of your game. You're getting paid a lot of money to do it, so deal with it. That comes with the risk. That comes with the sport. The risk when you sign on the dotted line that freak things may happen. Who was the kid from the Mets?
Dustin Fowler, the Yankees.
The first play, that kid's running, and it was a wet field,
he
right?
He never got to bat.
And his knee goes into like an electrical box, and he's done. So there will be some that say, you know what, that's what they risk, and there will be others that said, oh, that's a shame. They should try and make it a little better for the players, and then everywhere in between. I can't give a definite answer on that.
Let's play it again because there's new audience here with us. These were part of Bryce Harper's comments the day after the injury.
I don't like wet bases. Definitely a bummer. Hitting the bag and. Just trying to hustle down the line and get a knock across the bag, and pretty much felt like I was like a slip in the shower. I thought to myself, it's 10 o'clock at night and we're playing a game in the rain. I was really upset about that as well. But it's just a freak accident, freak situation. I think it flashed before your eyes, and then you realize, there's nothing you can do. I think we got the best possible news that we could.
From that side of it, he's absolutely right. Again, there are many that would say I would have been interesting if someone asking a question said, getting a whole lot of tweets here, Bryce, that said if you had hit the front of the bag like you were taught to do, that this wouldn't have happened. And things are bang bang plays. As I said, he's trying to make a hustle play there, and he's just stretching out to touch the bag as quick as he can. It happens. Fluke things happen all the time in sports. That doesn't mean there's a remedy for it all the time in sports. They're going to happen. If you can somehow make it better, and I don't know if that's going to be a discussion now that you see one of the stars of the league going to miss, maybe a month, maybe more. We'll see if there's a way around that. I don't know. But freak injuries happen all the time.
Well, the way that foot plants and then he just
looks horrible.
It's just catapulted into the air.
As I said, I have seen guys with barely a limp walk off the field and have a torn ACL. So it looked like nothing. This looked like, they had the teammates helping him off. He couldn't put any weight on it. I thought, oh, my God, he's done. And, it turns out bone bruise, no ligament, no tendon, big dodge.
Before the injury, Harper had the best odds to win the National League MVP award in Vegas. Paul Goldschmidt, who leads the National League in WAR, ranked second. The Nationals, as their lead 13 and a half games at the time of the injury. So the question is, I believe they're 13 and a half up now. Where were they right when he got hurt? Because he's missed one game so far. The question is, if he's played this long, played this well, been this valuable, and basically put the division away, their lead is right now 14 games. So if they have in the division, they are, they're still 13 and 12. They're 12 and a half games behind the Dodgers for the best record in the sport. But neither that, that's neither here nor there. Has he done enough to win the National League MVP, even if he misses almost all of the rest of the season?
I think a lot has to do with who else is in it. Who else is the guy? Right now he's fourth in average, and he's fifth in home runs. I'm looking for other names that double up.
Well,
there.
Again, Goldschmidt was the second choice in best odds
Goldschmidt,
to win.
And right now, Goldschmidt's not in the top 5 in average, not in the top 5 in home runs. He's second in RBIs in the National League. So I guess that's what I would say. It depends on who your competition is. If somebody else for a contending team was lighting it up and wasn't hurt, I would say that would almost knock, and he kept going, that would knock Harper out of it. But I don't know if that's going on right now in the National League with one other person really lighting it up and really separating himself.
All right, we got a lot to do here. We got Dominique Foxworth going to join us coming up next on news all around the National Football League on and off the field. Stay with us, Mike and Mike.
Did you hear that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant recommend it? Dove Men Plus Care user Rob said that it's like the Hoover Dam, but for his armpits. Well, if it can hold back that much sweat, Rob, it must be good. Pick up some new Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant for yourself at your local retailer.
All right, we're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Dominique Foxworth will join us in a second on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I got a tall sheet of tweets here of a variety of different topics, all your Twitter reaction through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Mike, as you were doing a very nice job doing a video breakdown over there, I was just looking. The Baltimore Ravens have just tweeted, "We have waived quarterback Dustin Vaughn and signed free agent quarterback Thaddeus Lewis." So you had another quarterback signed by the Baltimore Ravens.
I think that's their third they signed since the news about Joe Flacco. And, again, Flacco not back on the field. Again, we're talking about a back issue. He hurt weightlifting. Back issues are so tricky. You really want to take your time with it. Hopefully for Baltimore, it's more precautionary of keeping him out and not recovering from it. But, and again, I know why you're bringing that up, because the name Colin Kaepernick has come into play, especially if this Flacco injury is going to be a little more than we think, or a re-aggravating type of an injury, and they need a more long-term quarterback. Is Ryan Mallett going to be that guy, or do you bring in someone like Colin Kaepernick?
And I understand that they're, with regard to this particular move, they're trying to figure out some better option for themselves, but it does feel like by making this constant rotation, it is almost flaunting the fact that they're continuing to make quarterback move after quarterback move after quarterback move and not making the one that everyone is waiting for.
The one thing I'll say is the quarterback moves they're making aren't for quarterbacks to really be on the field. If you're making a move for Colin Kaepernick, you're making a move for a guy that you may have to count on. It's Flacco hopefully coming back, if not Ryan Mallett. These other guys are signing. I don't think they're arms in camp and not really a thought process of these guys are potentially going to lead our team. If they get into that scenario and that situation and they still are signing other guys, that will be a little more eye-opening to me.
Let's bring Dominique Foxworth in on that conversation. He is the host of the Morning Roast here on ESPN Radio and so many other things, and, of course, was the president of the National Football League Players Association, so has a pretty good understanding of, not pretty good, he has an extraordinary understanding of how a lot of the inner workings of things work. Good morning, Dominique Foxworth.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So I want to start there because the current president of the NFLPA, Eric Winston, we'll get to Zeke Elliott, but the current president of the PA said recently that the union is ready to help Colin Kaepernick. This is a situation that he has that is different than almost any other I can remember in the years that I've been covering this. So you, from your knowledge of the inside, what exactly could the union do for Colin Kaepernick if it tried to?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's much that they can do now. Like, you can file a grievance, but I'm not sure the evidence that they would have to support that he is being potentially, or the evidence they would have to support that he's being blackballed or kept out of the league and the teams are colluding in some way to keep him out. Like, it seems very obvious to us that when names like Thaddeus Lewis are popping up, getting shots on the Ravens roster, that no disrespect to Thaddeus, but I don't think that he has the resume that Colin has. When that starts to happen, those sorts of things point to him not being treated fairly, and I think we all know that. I appreciate what the Ravens have done so far as far as being, like, public with their deliberation, but it's unfortunate that they didn't have the courage, frankly, to go the next step. And it's not just them. It's a lot of other teams who have far less courage than them when facing this issue.
And then moving on to the Zeke Elliott situation, let's start first with the 6 games. We had all thought 1 or 2. Shefty came on the end of last week and told us it could be more than that, like 6. We were all a little surprised. Were you surprised it was that heavy of a suspension?
Yeah, I was surprised, and I think that speaks to while Zeke is an imperfect person for us to have this conversation about, and it seems that the NFL actually, for once, did a pretty thorough investigation. But the fact that we're all surprised, you didn't know what to expect, you were thinking 1 or 2, maybe 6, and we're all over the place, I think that speaks to what the problem is with the NFL. And I completely understand them feeling that they needed to take some sort of action. And like I mentioned, this investigation seems better than the ones they've had in the past. But the fact that it feels so arbitrary, it's just kind of how the commissioner is feeling, seemed to me to be the problem, and has been a problem for a long time with commissioner discipline in the league.
Agreed. I mean, the drug suspensions, we see certain numbers to them, but with this, we've seen it all over the place. I think it should be 6 or more, but at least 6, start with it, stick with it, and let the appeals process go where it's going to go. On that note, the appeal, well, it goes back to the commissioner or someone he designates, do you see any way, after how long this investigation took and all the info they have, that it gets dropped from 6 games at all?
Yeah, I'm not going to be foolish enough to speculate, because if you would have asked me before the 6 games, I would have said I would have said another number and it would have been completely wrong. So I don't know. I could see it being reduced. I think this is, while Ezekiel has some other public issues, this is kind of the first time he will be punished. So often the commissioner in the league is a little lenient when it comes to appeals with first-time offenders. But like I mentioned before, you never really know what to expect with the league, and that's unfortunate. And right now with Ezekiel Elliott and what he's being accused of, and with the evidence that they have in that report, no one's going to jump on the table and fight to defend Ezekiel Elliott. I understand that. It's fair. But when the commissioner makes a mistake in his discipline, which he's done, I think, more times than he's gotten it right in recent history, at least, then we're all going to be very upset. And we can point back to a number of examples in the NFL's history that kind of set this precedent.
Mike and Mike, Dominique Foxworth, again, the former president of the NFLPA. So in most of those dealings, it's the union on one side, the players on one side, and the commissioner representing the owners on the other. In a unique case like this one, where the owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, who just won into the Hall of Fame and has long been one of Goodell's most vocal supporters and is an extremely powerful figure within the sport, is said to be furious. I asked Shefty the question this morning, what does that even mean? Like, what if Jerry Jones is really, really mad, what can he do about it? And Shefty wasn't sure. From your understanding, having been on the inside, if one of the owners is really, really mad at Roger Goodell, what difference does that actually make?
Well, I mean, there's 31 owners, and then the Packers are publicly owned. So I remember very clearly that Robert Kraft was one of Goodell's biggest supporters, and he still came down hard on the Patriots, in part because Goodell is a politician, and his constituents are the 31 owners. So he needs to please all of them. He can't just focus on pleasing just one. And I think that played a big role in the suspension that came down on the Patriots, because a lot of the other owners and teams were frustrated with them feeling that the Patriots got off light with some other cheating scandals. So I think that the fact that Jerry Jones might be upset means something, but if the rest of the owners don't see this as something that they want changed and they're okay with it, Roger Goodell has to have enough votes to keep his job going forward, frankly, and you don't get those votes by just kowtowing to the interests of one party in that group.
In a bigger picture manner of looking at this, Dominique, there are some people who might say the NFL creating its own investigative arm to look into this, there are some people who might not like them doing that. They would argue that the league should sit back. They should wait for the legal system to run its course. There were no charges brought against Ezekiel Elliott, and people will say, well, if there were no charges brought, then the league should just stay out of it and let him play. From your perspective, as a former player, as a former leader within the Players Association, and now as a commentator and someone as close to it as you are, where do you fall in that debate?
Yeah, I mean, I go back, like you mentioned, I've been involved in NFLPA in a leadership role for quite some time, and there was a time when you kind of waited, the league waited until after some sort of criminal justice decision was made before they made any sort of discipline on their side. And then, frankly, it was one of the bigger mistakes I feel like we made on the union side. It was around the time when Pac-Man Jones was getting into issues, but he never actually was convicted of anything. At least he hadn't been yet. And the players were upset because we all recognized that it wasn't a good look for us as a league. And that was kind of the point when we kind of okay the idea of Goodell having some extra judicial power, because I guess we thought it was something that would be in the best interest of the league and the best interest of all the players to kind of protect the image. And from that point forth, I think Goodell's gone overboard with that sort of thing. And it's not something we've talked a lot about my union experience. And one thing that comes up all the time when you bring this up is people say, well, the union negotiated it, so you can't complain about it. But as you know, I've written about and talked a lot about the kind of power asymmetry between the union and the league. And it's also important to know that this player discipline stuff is a key in their minds, in the minds of the owners and the commissioner. It is a key to their revenue generation. And they want to draw sponsors, big name, major company sponsors that can afford to pay billions of dollars to be associated with the NFL. The last thing they want to do is have the NFL shield to be associated with criminals, frankly. And while there aren't that many of them in the league, all you need is a few high-profile cases to go unpunished for them to feel like their image is sullied and for sponsors to walk away. And, I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of the NBA issue back when they felt that they had a problem with like hip hop, so to speak, and they pulled out all the dress code things because they wanted to control their image because they recognize that these major companies are careful about who they want to associate with. So it's something that is non-negotiable, frankly, in the negotiations of the CBA for the league and the union.
I want to ask you this. Yeah, I want to get onto the field, but you as a former player, me as a former player, I brought this up before. A couple of guys, we didn't get in any trouble. We didn't have to worry about the discipline that was going on, that's going on now. And when you get to the CBA, I went through a strike in '87. So you want to fight for certain things. Would you, if we're sitting in that meeting room and our player rep is telling us things that, hey, do we want to fight for this? Do we want to fight for that? If you were told, hey, we don't want the commissioner to have control, we think this is huge and we want to fight for this, would you buy into that and say, you know what? Is that something that I want to put my neck on the line for, or would I rather fight for something else, knowing it's a small amount of players who are getting in trouble, and maybe we don't like the discipline from the league, but why don't we fight for something that affects 2,000 and not 200?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the logic and part of the reason why the commissioner discipline issue is unlikely to change, but it feels that way until it happens to you or until it happens to your team. I remember very clearly that, and I know you guys had Ryan Clark on earlier. Maybe you should have him on again later and discuss with him how the Steelers felt about commissioner discipline, because they felt like they were wrongly targeted a bunch prior to the last CBA negotiation, and it was something that I believe that locker room was interested and willing to fight for, but it didn't affect the rest of the locker rooms in the same way. So I understand everyone is all gung-ho about they want to get higher salaries, they want to get commissioner discipline fixed, they want to adjust schedules, everybody wants everything until it comes time to pay for it, and there's a cost for all of that stuff. You have to either pay for it with your sacrifice or pay for it with percentage in the revenue share. It's not something that you can just take. You can't go in there and manipulate the owners and commissioner with some sort of fast, fancy negotiation tactic. It has a cost, and guys most often, logically, frankly, are not willing to pay that cost for a punishment that they'll probably never face.
We are Mike and Mike. Dominique Foxworth is with us. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. He's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Let's do some on-the-field stuff. Your all-22 piece on the undefeated this week is in part on rookie quarterbacks, and it certainly has struck me. Again, we're talking about one game for most of these guys against, with backups and against backups. But I certainly was struck by how, generally speaking, most of the high-profile rookie quarterbacks looked really comfortable and really good in their debut performances. What's in the piece on the undefeated, and what was your takeaway?
Yeah, so I wrote that piece last week. I've been just trying to give everybody – I get frustrated, honestly, with how much kind of misinformation and kind of lazy analysis that I find myself having to be exposed to. So I decided to go in and try to give people 22 kind of deep football insights that can help them win their football debate. So that piece last week about young quarterbacks, I got a piece coming out tomorrow, I believe, that's going to dive deep into offensive coordinators and game planning and those sorts of things. Just try to give people the facts and the real kind of deep information, so when you get caught at the water cooler with that annoying guy who thinks he knows football, you can mic drop on him with some real football insight.
That said, how about the rookies? From what you did see from Mahomes, who everyone said, he's nowhere near ready to play. And again, it's a preseason. I understand. From Trubisky, who people said is nowhere near ready to play. Watson, maybe it shouldn't surprise us because of his experience, and maybe he was more ready to play coming in. Deshaun Kaiser had moments. What did you take away from that?
Yeah, I'm not on board with the people who are going to dismiss this as just preseason or it's not a big deal. While I understand you're going to see base defenses and you're not going to see exotic blitzes, I do agree and understand that it's a lot easier to perform in the preseason than it will be in the regular season. But you got to start somewhere, and you don't have to go far to see what Dak Prescott did last year in the preseason, and he turned out to be pretty good in the regular season. So I'm not going to crown any of these guys as Rookie of the Year or future All-Pros. But I do think that it's encouraging what we've seen, and I think it's indicative of a trend across football. Is freshman quarterbacks are a little bit more prepared. There's a lot more education about how to play the position in the younger levels, and guys come into college a little bit more ready, which means that they then get to the NFL a little bit more ready. And if the coaches are doing things to put them in the right position and they have good support around them, there's no reason why any of those quarterbacks can't do well going forward. And I would even go as far as to say I think Deshaun Kaiser has a really good chance, because I think Hugh has taken over that Hugh Jackson has taken over that offense, the head coach there for the Cleveland Browns, and he is in my mind, one of the kind of sharpest offensive minds we have in the NFL.
I like how with the pieces you're doing, you can take people into where they don't normally go. So take us there as well. I have my perspective in doing it, and I'm sure yours. We're at about the third, for some, into the fourth week of training camp, third week of camp, coming up to the second preseason game. Where were you as a player mentally at this point?
Yeah, not in a good place. Yeah. But fortunately, so we keep going back to the CBA stuff, but we managed to get 2-a-days eliminated, and I never get, in the last negotiations, I never get text messages from players thanking me for that. I just get text messages complaining about all the things that aren't perfect. But I do think that the guys' bodies are in much better shape now than they were back then, and I think it's probably true of us, too, when we played. It's better than the condition the guys' bodies were in prior to that. But at this point for me, during training camp, I was looking at the schedule, counting till the end of training camp so we could get to some real games, because not only is it a tax on your body, it's on your mind too. It feels like Groundhog Day. Every day is the same. It's not very fun. It's hard to get excited about matching up against your teammates for the second time in this day and for the 15th time in the last week. And you just want to go play against different colored jerseys and also in games that matter. So this time at camp is really tough, especially for veterans. I think the young guys is a little different. When I was young, camp was a different experience because you're kind of fighting for a job and fighting for the attention of the coaches.
He is Dominique Foxworth. You hear him on the Morning Roast. You read him on The Undefeated and many other places all across ESPN with terrific insight into football issues both on and off the field. Thank you, Nick. We'll see you soon.
Great, guys. Thank you very much.
That's Dominique Foxworth, again, circling it all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. I have said all along, and I'm by no means an expert in these areas, but if the Players Association wanted to do something for Colin Kaepernick, I'm not 100% sure I know what they could do.
I don't think they can do anything for them outside of trying to prove collusion, and I don't think any of us believe there is collusion to keep Colin Kaepernick out of the league. So other than that, I don't think there's anything. I know Spike Lee is heading up a rally that's coming up, the 23rd or 25th or something in August in front of the NFL headquarters.
It's next Wednesday.
I mean, I understand what they want to show support, but that's not going to get him a job or help get him a job either. I don't think any owner of the 31 owners, 32 again, with the Packers being public, is going to feel forced into giving him a job, and I don't think anybody is Roger Goodell is going to pressure any owner to say, hey, we need to get out from under this, someone sign him. I don't think that's happening either. So I don't really think there is a whole lot anybody can do about this situation.
As far as Zeke Elliott is concerned, that's where it becomes sort of a complicated issue when you are in the leadership position of a union. You heard him say no one wants to jump up and pound their fist on a table for a guy when you've seen some of the evidence that was in the report that Roger Goodell, in a letter, I should say, that Goodell sent to Zeke Elliott. That said, it is their job to defend the players' rights, and if they feel the players' rights have been violated on some level, that is their responsibility to go at it. But Zeke Elliott got 6 games here, and I don't think anything is going to change that. I think Zeke Elliott is going to miss the first 6 games of the NFL season.
I don't either, and what we hear is I'll say this, we hear the Dallas Cowboys involved in a whole lot of suspensions, including Zeke. Cowboy players have lost 104 games due to suspension since 2014. That's 39 more than any other team over that span. 104 for them, 65 for the Ravens, 54 for the Redskins, 51 for the Browns. They're getting guys suspended, and they're getting fined from the league because of that, because of the amount of guys that are getting suspended. So, may need to look in the mirror there a little bit at what's going on. They seem to be having guys on that team that have a hankering for getting suspended, Zeke being the latest of that. But and I think one of the conversations, too, getting back to Zeke, in what Shefty said, in the appeals process, is Zeke being contrite? And it doesn't sound like he's going to. It sounds like he's going in there blazing with, hey, I didn't do this. Here's my proof that I didn't do it, and they're going to fight it that way. So I don't think that number is going to be coming down at all.
The other thing that I thought of when I realized how bad the suspension, not bad, how significant the suspension is, and Shefty's initial tweet that talked about how incredibly angry Jerry Jones was, my first thought was, I think they waited until after the Hall of Fame for this.
Oh, I do
for
as
that
well.
Reason. Don't
so
you?
Jerry wouldn't
give
bring
it a
that
few
up.
days.
Yeah.
Not only that, but just because this was Jerry's celebration.
I agree.
Everyone was going to be around him, and he was going to be around everyone else. And they probably knew how upset he was going to be by this.
I agree.
So I when people talk about how long it took no one will ever acknowledge this. I can't prove it, but it certainly seemed reasonable to me that you might say, let's wait until after the Hall of Fame, give it a couple of days, your typical Friday afternoon, news dropping of a story.
Yeah, I think when people are saying it took that long, I don't think they just meant this extra week and a half, that it was way even.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But let's say they made this decision, I'm making this up, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you said, okay, we got sitting there on August 5th or whatever day it
Cowboys
was,
are
Jerry
playing
Jones
in the Hall
going
of Fame
into
game.
the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
They're playing in the Hall of Fame
I can see
game.
it. I could see it.
Do you want that front and center in the story?
I could see that.
I don't know that for sure, but it certainly seems sensible.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Justin Thomas, whose name is conveniently spelled with 6 letters in his first name and 6 letters in his last name.
Idiot.
Which he has in common with the winners of all 3 of the other majors this year. All 4 major winners have 6 letters in their first name and 6 letters in their last. The courtesy on that is Jason Sobel. The fact that you don't find that fascinating astounds me.
Let me just be clear. When I said idiot under my breath, that was to you, not to Justin Thomas.
No, I get it. Justin Thomas won the PGA. He's anything but an idiot.
The ridiculous.
You don't find that interesting?
No.
So Sergio Garcia, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas, each of them 6 letters in their first and 6 letters in their last name. Hembo, my researcher, this is information I'd like you to be digging up for us on a day-to-day basis. While you're busy over there with your strike zone,
you would be wasting his time by having you find out that direct.
This is the kind of quirky information I'm looking for. Finally, the Fantasy Football Marathon begins tonight, 7 Eastern on ESPN2, 28 straight hours of fantasy football coverage. And our Sports Center is brought to you by Dove.
Did you hear that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant recommend it? Dove Men Plus Care user Bobby says he doesn't know how it works, but it gets the job done. Pick up some new Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant for yourself at your local retailer. Before I know you want to get into this with the baseball, I really want to know. We showed the video for those joining us back now. Justin Thomas putted, and the ball hung on the lip. He turned his back and walked away. He couldn't believe that it didn't go in. And there was a time, they said 12 seconds, and then the ball fell in the hole. Is there a rule?
Yes, I've always been under the impression it was 10 seconds. So, and I read that took 12 seconds. But the point is, he didn't go up there and do anything. So at that point, the ball fell in on its own. Here it is. Rule 16.2 and the rules of golf covers this scenario. When any part of the ball overhangs the lip of the hole, the player is allowed enough time to reach the hole without unreasonable delay and an additional 10 seconds to determine whether the ball is at rest. Given that Thomas hadn't addressed the ball before it fell into the hole, he was well within the rules and in excellent position to win his first major title. So at that point, because he hadn't walked up to it, for lack of a better word, the beginning of his next shot hadn't started yet. This was still the continuation of his previous shot. This was the continuation of that shot. Once he walks up and addresses the ball, the clock starts ticking on his next shot. And at that point, it's 10 seconds. I never understood that nuance in the rule, but that must be what it is. The fact that he hadn't even walked up to it yet meant the clock on 10 seconds hadn't even begun ticking.
So he could walk up to it and then the clock would start. Could he walk up to it and walk and put his foot right on the grass right next? I mean, listen, I'm just asking.
I mean, listen.
You know what I mean?
When you're playing, you get down on the and start blowing on it, right? You'll get down there and start.
I'll walk right by it to just disrupt and move the ground a little bit so it would go in. Would that be wrong?
They wouldn't do that. Yeah, you would do it. They wouldn't.
Why would that be wrong?
Just because it's a violation of the rules of the game.
No, it's
not.
not.
The ball is sitting there.
Is that a violation? That's what I'm asking. If I was walking up to address the ball,
and you jumped up and down.
No, I didn't say jump up and down. When one of my steps goes right where the ball doesn't hit the ball, but just makes the ground.
First of all, now you're standing on the lip of the hole, which no one wants.
I'm not, because I'm on the other side of the ball. I'm not hitting the ball. I'm walking past my ball to then turn around and tap it in. I just want to know, is that wrong?
I don't know. Could you wave the putter around to try and create some wind? I mean, the bottom line of it is this. I can't believe that ball went in. I couldn't believe it stayed up initially, and then I couldn't believe it went in when it went in. And further, I cannot believe that you don't find it fascinating that the winners of all 4 of golf's majors this year spelled their names with 6 letters in the first name and 6 in the last. Also, by the way, so your son is staying up 28 consecutive hours tonight. Do you think he might want to try and go for the record for most consecutive hours awake? This was a record at one time in the Guinness Book of World Records, and to their credit, the Guinness people stopped recognizing sleep deprivation records.
That's dangerous.
Because there are many physical and mental health risks involved. But just for the record, 28 hours isn't awfully close. In 1977, a woman from the UK by the name of Maureen Weston voluntarily stayed awake for 449 hours. That is 18 days and 17 hours, and made it into the Guinness Book of World Records again. They stopped acknowledging those sleep deprivation records, and by no means, if you are a young person listening to this, don't even think about it.
Yeah, it's not a record anymore, so there's no sense in doing it.
There are extraordinary physical and mental health risks connected with this. It's not funny. It's not cute. Don't do it. Reading the rest of the story, however, she started hallucinating towards the end, but suffered no long-term effects.
And they said no stimulants are allowed. I mean, you can't just overload on caffeine and all that. You can't do any of that.
Who said that?
That's what Hembo's saying, that was part of it, right?
Before that record.
I'm sure there's somebody
again, they're not
watching.
recognizing that record anymore. You should not be recognizing sleep deprivation records, and I'm glad that they don't. For your son and the others of our staff who are doing 28 straight hours, there will be stimulants.
There will be stimulants.
There will be 5-hour energies, and the Starbucks downstairs has never been so busy.
Forget all that. There'll be donuts. That's the best stimulant of all. Why that would never work in the Golick House, that record, because while we like our activities, we're all very active in sports and such, we love our sleep. We love our sleep.
Yeah.
So that 18 days, no, couldn't happen.
I've got a tweet here from @MagTom, who tweets, "This is clear anti-Cowboys bias on the league's part." Tom,
stop it. Jeez.
Tom, I love you, Tom. I love your fandom. I love your passion.
Yeah.
But let's just make one thing as clear as it could possibly be made, and last year was maybe the best reminder of this we've had in a long time. The Dallas Cowboys and their star are the single best thing the NFL has. They are the best thing the National Football League has. Their games rate at a disproportionately higher number to anyone's and everyone else's games. The best thing that happened to the NFL in what was a tough year for them with a highly contested and controversial presidential election going on, and whatever impact the Colin Kaepernick protest had and whatever else was causing NFL ratings to go down. When the Cowboys play, people watch. The last thing on this earth that Roger Goodell wanted to do was take Ezekiel Elliott off the field for 6 games.
Completely agree. Could not agree more. But listen, those are fans who think, somebody has it out for them. So I understand, again, fan is short for fanatic, and you can have those kind of thoughts, and we can completely disagree with them.
Okay, Mike and Mike. Next matter.
Yeah.
So Bryce Harper slips
Yes.
on the bag at first base on a wet night, and then his cleat jams into the ground on the other side, and it's one of the ugliest looking injuries we've seen in a long time. And again, thank goodness the news was about as good as you could ever hope it would be on the actual injury itself. And it has led a lot of people to wonder about whether they might make some kind of changes to the bag, to the base, to first base. Well, that is not the kind of change that at least one major leaguer is interested in.
Okay.
Did you see the story from Ben Zobrist? And it's not the first time
I did not.
that he has brought this up. So Zobrist, now of the Cubs, who's been around forever, got called out for a third strike to end a game. The Cubs were trying to mount a rally. They were down I had it up the other day. They were down like 5 runs going into the ninth inning, 5 or 6 runs going into the ninth inning, and they had a little bit of a rally going. They scored a couple of runs. They had a couple of men on base, and Zobrist comes up. I'm doing this from memory, but I want to say he was either the tying run or he needed to get on base, and the tying run would come to the plate. And he got called out on what he thought was an egregiously bad call, looking on a called strike 3.
Okay.
And he said afterwards, there's been one other like that I've had in my career that was worse, and he is strongly in favor of the electronic strike zone.
Uh-huh.
He is calling for the electronic strike zone. It is not the first time he has expressed his interest in that and his belief that there is no reason that we should allow human error to be doing things that that the technology could clear up if we have the ability to do it. So Ben Zobrist is in favor of the E zone, the electronic strike zone.
Huh. Do you think we're ever going to get there?
What?
Do you think we're going to get there?
Yes. Do I think eventually that'll happen? Yes. Do I think it'll be very soon? No. I think we're talking about years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
You're in favor of it or you're against it?
I don't know if I want to go that far, quite honestly. I mean, I understand the merits of it. I do. But
it does not mean that we will not still have umpires.
Oh, no. I mean,
it does not mean that an umpire will lose his job. We still need someone at home plate to call runners safe and out.
Here's the beauty, is in baseball, with so many leagues, you can test it. You can test it somewhere. You can test it in the minors.
It's a lot of technology to be testing, so it's pretty expensive to be testing in the minors.
Not worried about money.
They've got the money.
Yeah, they got the money. And I'm more concerned about you saying electronic than electronic.
It's the electronic strike zone.
What is electronic?
As opposed to?
The electronic.
Electronic strike zone?
The electronic, not the electronic.
The electronic strike zone as opposed to the electronic strike zone.
Yeah, electronic. I don't understand that.
You're miring me in a syntax discrepancy now?
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com. All right, what if I told you that one player this year became a major champion, shot the lowest 72-hole score in PGA Tour history, became the youngest player ever to break 60 on tour, and became the owner of the best single-round score to par in U.S. Open history, and that all those things happened in the same year? You might say he is the Tour Player of the Year.
Say it's a pretty good year going on right now.
And he is right now the PGA champion. Congratulations and welcome to Mike and Mike to Justin Thomas. Justin, again, congratulations and well done. How are you this morning? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a lot better than I have some other post-major championship Mondays, that's for sure. Thank you guys for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. And we showed on TV just a few minutes ago that one remarkable shot where the ball hung on the lip for what felt like forever. Can you take us through the emotions of sitting there watching that ball hanging there, and before you even got a chance to consider walking up and addressing it, it tumbled in?
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things that, when you win, things just happen and tend to go your way. And I felt like I'd played really well in some tournaments this year, but just some stuff didn't go my way, and it wasn't meant to be. And I understand that happens. And when that ball fell in, I kind of was obviously it not only did it was great to make a birdie, but it put me in a better position to I moved up and was closer to the lead, and Hideki had just made about a 30-footer for birdie, so that was huge momentum-wise to not let him kind of steal one from me. And I don't know, it was weird. I felt like it. Even as soon as it stopped on the lip, I really felt like it was going to go in still, because the hill was going that way and the grain was going that way, and I still don't know how it didn't go in the middle, to be honest, because I thought it was going to go back to the right and it didn't. And then when it hung there, it was just, it was so far on the lip that it was just like, man, this thing has to fall. And I kind of wish I would have seen it go in, but hearing the crowd go nuts was kind of a great way to find out too.
I probably would have looked foolish because I'd have jumped up and down next to it and waved my hat at it until it did fall in, which probably would not have been represented well on the PGA. As this round is going on, and it's getting closer and closer to the end, what was going on in your mind? I'm sure not doubts, but Was the mind really kind of constricting there, and was your caddy keeping you less nervous? Take us where we can't go there.
Yeah, my caddy did an unbelievable job. Jimmy Johnson was keeping me just calm and in the moment. And, he just kept saying, let's just keep hitting our shots, bud. Let's just keep doing what we do. Let's just keep playing our game. And having a great caddy in a situation like that is huge. I mean, I can't really even put it into words, honestly, how important it is and how much it's needed. For someone like me, I was there in contention at the U.S. Open to start the day, but when you have a chance to win the back nine and then the last 5 holes, it's a different animal. And I don't know, I was just very calm all day. I felt so comfortable, and I felt confident. I really, really felt good about my game going into the week. I put some great prep work in, and I don't know, I just felt like it was going to be a good week, and no matter what, and the result was just going to we'd wait to find out, and I was glad to find out what it was.
Justin Thomas, major champion PGA winner, is with us on Mike and Mike, and this is of the four majors the one that I think means the most to the PGA professionals. Your grandfather was a PGA professional. Your dad was a PGA professional. What does it mean to you, and what did it mean to them for you to hold up that trophy?
Yeah, it's something that I'm very fortunate to be able to share with, being the third generation of a PGA professional or PGA member. And myself, my dad was so excited when I became a PGA member, last year. I think that's something that probably a lot of people don't understand, is they would just assume that we're all PGA members, but you have to become one. And I, knowing how important it is to my family and my dad and my grandpa, and how the amount of work that my dad's put in, and I've watched it firsthand, and to have him there yesterday and share that moment with him and all my family, and then get to talk to my grandpa was it's really cool, and something that'll never be taken away from us and never be taken away from me. And it's just cool knowing that first one was kind of for us.
And I love how you say that first one, because I know in your mind there are going to be many more, and there certainly may be. And a lot of your young cohorts on tour were there. What was it like for you? I saw Ricky there and Spieth and probably quite a few other players that we didn't get to see on TV who hung around to be there to celebrate with you. What was that like?
It's really cool. It's something that I think is awesome. I don't know if you want to call it a tradition or a habit that we're getting into, but anytime you can see your friends win at the big stage is, it's awesome. It's the winning a major is the pinnacle of a lot of people's careers, and it's at the height of mine right now. And to be able to share that with some of my best friends, Jordan and Ricky, and then Bud Cauley hanging around. He finished his round before I even started. I was about 8 minutes from going to play, hitting putts, and he was walking in the scoring tent. He just finished his round. For him to hang around 5 hours, when he's got a tournament in Greensboro next week. He lives with me down here in Florida, and that's just something that I know wouldn't have happened 15, 20 years ago, but it's just kind of where the game is right now. And yeah, we all want to win for ourselves, but if we don't, we hope our friends can, so we can kind of enjoy it with them. And to have those guys there, and to have other friends there. Jordan and Ricky's girlfriend's hanging around, and some other friends that we have hanging there, and family, and just it was really cool. It's hopefully something that I get to experience a couple more times and many more times in my career.
Justin, well played, well done, congratulations. Have a great rest of the year.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, absolutely, appreciate it.